go get Mrs. Fox. And they went and got her. And they pronounced him dead.
On October 17, 1991, Las Vegas witnessed a funeral that shook all of America. Redd Foxx, the comedy legend and star of Sanford and Son, passed away, leaving behind millions of grieving fans. But as the media cameras panned across the church, something unexpected happened. The cast who once made sitcom history with him were nowhere to be seen. No Demond Wilson, no LaWanda Page, no Whitman Mayo. The familiar faces synonymous with the television icon. Only a few close friends quietly came to bid him farewell, while audiences who had hoped for an on-screen reunion were left in stunned silence. Why was there such an eerie silence? Was it coincidence, personal conflict? Or was there a shocking drama hidden behind the spotlight? Let us unravel this untold story in the video. And don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell, so you won't miss the jaw-dropping revelations behind the scenes. From a poverty-stricken childhood to a legend of American comedy. When the question of why the Sanford and Son cast was absent from Redd Foxx's funeral still lingers, we are compelled to turn back time to better understand the man behind the spotlight, to uncover the roots of conflicts, distance, and the loneliness he faced at the end of his life. One cannot overlook the arduous childhood that shaped his personality. Gritty, humorous, and at times defiant. And it was from this very background that Redd Foxx emerged, wielding laughter as a weapon against fate. Redd Foxx, born John Elroy Sanford, on December 9, 1922, in St. Louis, Missouri, came from a poor working-class family. His father, Fred Sanford, abandoned the family when John was just 4 years old, leaving his mother, Mary Hughes, to raise him alone in hardship. Poverty wasn't just about lacking food and clothing. It became a deep-seated trauma in young John's mind, pushing him early on to learn how to survive and use humor as a means to endure. Life in the impoverished black neighborhoods of the 1920s, 1930s was far from easy. Rampant unemployment, pervasive racial discrimination, and as a fatherless child, John was often the target of ridicule. He grew up in the poor working-class district of Southside Chicago after his family moved there in search of better opportunities. This environment became his harshest school of life, where he learned to mask the harshness with a smile. From a young age, friends gave him the nickname Chicago Red due to his dark skin and natural red hair. The name Red stuck with him for life and eventually became the foundation of his stage name, Redd Foxx. Despite his difficult surroundings, John quickly displayed a natural talent for comedy. He could imitate adult voices and insert sarcastic remarks that made his friends burst out laughing. This became his survival skill. If he couldn't afford toys, at least he could grab people's attention with laughter. However, that childhood wasn't filled only with laughter. At the age of 13, John had to drop out of school and work various odd jobs to help support his family. He worked as a busboy dishwasher and even took on backbreaking manual labor in factories, earning meager wages. In 1930s, America, a young black boy without a father, had almost no opportunities. Yet it was precisely in these tough jobs that John accumulated life experience and listened to hundreds of life stories, raw material that later fueled his sharp social satire and comedy. As a teenager, John also ventured into music. He joined a street music group, learning to sing, play instruments, and perform around various corners of Chicago. For a time, he was part of gospel and blues groups, performing in small local venues. But beyond music, John realized what the audience loved most was the comedic banter between songs. He joked about poverty, mocked rich employers, and satirized the suffering of the working class. And to his surprise, audiences responded with enthusiastic applause. In that moment, John understood that laughter was his true path. His life on the streets also gave John a hardened edge. He had minor run-ins with the law and participated in the Chitlin Circuit, a network of performance clubs for black entertainers. This underground world was harsh, but it also trained outstanding comedians like Richard Pryor and Sammy Davis Jr. It was in this environment that John developed a no-frills comedic style, raw, blunt, and often crude, yet it struck at the heart of Black American pain and sorrow. By the early 1940s, just into his 20s, John adopted the stage name Redd Foxx. The fox was inspired by a nickname from Friends and the sly, quick nature of a fox. The name Redd Foxx carried a streetwise charm, was easy to remember, and gradually gained audience affection. But the road to the spotlight was never easy. For years, Redd Foxx performed in seedy bars, living off meager tips. There were days when he survived on stale bread and water while waiting for his next show. Yet it was precisely the poverty, hardship, and years of struggle that forged his resilience and unique comedic style. Unlike the clean-cut white comedians on TV, Redd Foxx brought to the stage stories of unemployment, debt, and racism, everyday realities for the poor. He made fun of his own misfortunes, transforming pain into comedy so that the entire room could laugh together. And that laughter was not only liberating, but also rebellious, a window into the tough soul of a boy who grew up amid poverty. Sanford and Son, a sitcom that paved the way for black comedy. From a poor kid in Chicago, Redd Foxx stepped into the spotlight with his rebellious spirit and innate talent, turning laughter into a survival weapon. But to fully understand his journey, one must look at the historic moment when Foxx was given the chance to appear on television, a moment when Sanford and Son not only changed his life, but also shook American television to its core. In 1972, NBC officially aired Sanford and Son, a project developed by Norman Lear and Bud Yorkin, adapted from the British series Steptoe and Son. The story was set in the Watts neighborhood of Los Angeles, a place that had been the epicenter of the 1965 race riots. This setting was no coincidence. It reflected the reality of a working-class black community struggling with poverty and yearning to rise. Redd Foxx played Fred G. Sanford, a cranky old junk dealer living with his son, Lamont, portrayed by Demond Wilson. The generational clash, a grumpy conservative father and a son dreaming of escaping poverty, created humorous yet deeply relatable tension. From its very first season, the show became a sensation. Over 25 million viewers tuned in weekly, propelling Sanford and Son into the ranks of America's most popular programs. Catchphrases like "You Big Dummy" and the dramatic heart attack "Bit Elizabeth, I'm coming to join you" quickly entered pop culture, repeated in daily life and other media. But more important than the numbers was the cultural significance. Sanford and Son was one of the first sitcoms to feature an almost entirely black cast, paving the way for later landmark shows like Good Times 1974 and The Jeffersons 1975. At a time when American television largely revolved around white middle-class families, Sanford and Son dared to depict a working-class black family with all the messiness, humor, and bitterness of real life. Critics described it as satirical and unapologetically honest storytelling, as it did not shy away from race issues, but instead used humor to expose generational divides and the gap between dreams and harsh reality. However, this success also sparked controversy. Black writer Eugenia Collier publicly criticized Sanford and Son as a white man's view of black men, since the script was handled by an all-white writing team. She argued that the show perpetuated stereotypes, portraying black men as lazy, cunning, and reliant on schemes rather than hard work. As a result, Sanford and Son was simultaneously praised as a breakthrough and condemned for reinforcing harmful tropes. This tension made the show a subject of academic debate for decades to come. Behind the scenes, Sanford and Son also revealed the entertainment industry's inequities. Despite driving NBC to ratings highs, Redd Foxx was paid less than Carol O'Connor, the star of All in the Family, a sibling show airing at the same time. Fox had to go on strike multiple times, demanding NBC pay him an additional 25% of net profits to match his white counterpart. The 1974 incident when he walked off set for 6 episodes captured national attention. But behind the applause for his boldness was a shaken production team, exhausted co-stars, and the beginning of cracks within the cast. Beyond Fox, many supporting characters also left a strong impression. Whitman Mayo as Grady, the gentle, simple-minded friend of Fred, LaWanda Page as Aunt Esther with her legendary verbal showdowns, and Gregory Sierra as Julio, the Puerto Rican neighbor, all became iconic figures. But unlike Fox, their careers didn't take off. Though loved by audiences, they faced a Hollywood that offered limited roles for people of color, leaving many stuck in supporting roles or vanishing from the screen after the show ended. From a social perspective, Sanford and Son was more than a sitcom. It was a mirror reflecting America's collective psyche. It emerged in the aftermath of the civil rights movement when African Americans had made significant legal gains, but still remained trapped in cycles of poverty and discrimination. Fred Sanford, with his grumbling voice, stinginess, and obsession with illness, represented an aging, weary Black generation. Lamont symbolized the desire to break free and integrate into white America. Their father-son dialogue between staying or leaving contentment or ambition echoed the dilemmas faced by millions of Black families at the time. Massive success, fierce controversy. Sanford and Son made Redd Foxx a legend, but also placed him and his co-stars under intense pressure. The laughter on screen was a sharp weapon, but behind the camera inequality, contract disputes, and racial prejudice simmered. That was the soil where later conflicts would take root, conflicts that would begin to surface after Redd Foxx's death, when the entire cast was conspicuously absent from his funeral. The sudden death and heart-wrenching funeral of a legend. On October 11, 1991, the set of the sitcom The Royal Family in Los Angeles was thrown into chaos. Redd Foxx, then 68 years old, had just stepped into a scene with actress Della Reese. Suddenly, he clutched his chest and collapsed to the floor. At first, everyone burst out laughing, thinking it was another one of Fox's signature fake heart attacks a bit. He'd performed hundreds of times on Sanford and Son. But after a few seconds, when he remained motionless, the laughter abruptly stopped. This was no joke. A massive heart attack had taken his life right there on set. Redd Foxx was rushed to Queen of Angels Hollywood Presbyterian Hospital. Doctors tried to resuscitate him, but he never regained consciousness. The devastating news spread quickly. Within hours, major news outlets reported Redd Foxx, king of Black comedy, has died. For the American public, especially the Black community, it was a genuine shock. They had just seen him return to the screen in The Royal Family, as if a new chapter of his career was beginning, only for it to be closed forever. Public reaction came like a tidal wave. The Los Angeles Times described him as a legend who brought laughter to the poorest places. The New York Times published a lengthy obituary mentioning the over 50 comedy albums he had released, and how Sanford and Son once drew over 25 million weekly viewers at its peak. Eddie Murphy, a comedy star deeply influenced by Fox, gave an emotional interview. "Without Redd, there would be no me today." Younger artists like Chris Rock and Jamie Foxx considered his death the loss of a guiding elder. Yet his passing also exposed a bitter truth: Redd Foxx died deep in debt. Just 2 years earlier, the IRS had seized nearly all of his assets, including his Las Vegas home jewelry and personal belongings. From a TV star once earning $25,000 per episode, a sum equivalent to hundreds of thousands of dollars today, Foxx ended his life nearly penniless. It was Eddie Murphy who paid for the entire funeral, a gesture that the press frequently cited as proof of Hollywood's coldness. Redd Foxx's funeral was held on October 17, 1991 at Palm Mortuary in Las Vegas. Hundreds of fans gathered outside the chapel, some holding photos of Fred Sanford, others waving signs that read, "You Big Dummy," a tribute to one of his most iconic lines. The atmosphere was both solemn and deeply emotional. Tears were mixed with gentle laughter as people recalled behind-the-scenes stories and how Foxx turned his pain into jokes that made the whole world laugh with him. Inside the ceremony included many prominent figures. Actress Della Reese, his co-star in The Royal Family, gave a choked-up speech. Redd died doing what he loved most, making people laugh. Singer Joe Williams performed, turning the service into a deeply moving concert. Comedians Slappy White and Flip Wilson were there too, sharing memories from the 1950s when they and Foxx toured small stages in Black communities. Notably, the presence of boxer Mike Tyson and Colonel Tom Parker, legendary manager of Elvis Presley, showed how Foxx's influence reached far beyond comedy, touching music and sports alike. Media reports recorded around 300 attendees at the funeral. Foxx's casket, covered in white flowers, was placed at the center of the hall. Gospel music filled the room, interspersed with bursts of applause, as performers recalled unforgettable lines from Sanford and Son. The mood was both sorrowful and warm, as if Foxx were still there, cracking jokes with everyone, mocking even death itself if he could. After the funeral, his body was laid to rest at Palm Memorial Park. His gravesite quickly became a destination for fans. Every year, both young and old visitors leave small notes bearing his famous punchlines, personal messages to the man who made them immortal. Redd Foxx's passing marked the end of a life full of contradictions, from a poverty-stricken childhood to the spotlight of the stage, to becoming a TV star and ultimately returning to hardship. But the turnout of artists and fans at his funeral proved that his legacy did not die with him. On the contrary, the laughter he left behind transcended time, forever tied to the memories of millions of American families in the 1970s. Don Bubba Bexley, the only friend who accompanied Redd Foxx to the very end. As Redd Foxx's funeral came to a close, the media and fans alike noted one detail that shocked everyone. Not a single main cast member from Sanford and Son was present. Yet in that absence, one old friend quietly stood by Don Bubba Bexley, who played Bubba Bexley, Fred Sanford's close companion on screen, and who in real life had shared nearly half a century of friendship with Foxx. Don Bexley was born in 1910, 12 years older than Foxx. He was originally a vaudeville performer, comedian, singer, and dancer before his path led to television. Bexley first met Foxx in the 1940s at small clubs catering to black entertainers. They quickly became friends due to their similar personalities. Both loved satire, playful banter, and lived free-spirited lives. Together, they toured the Chitlin circuit, where black performers entertained black audiences, at a time when Hollywood and television still kept their doors tightly shut. Those difficult years forged a bond between them that was like brotherhood, an unbreakable connection. When Sanford and Son premiered in 1972, Foxx insisted on including Bexley. The character Bubba didn't appear often, usually just dropping in as the neighborhood friend for a chat, but every appearance brought a warm kind of laughter. To audiences, Bubba was Fred Sanford's right-hand man. The two bickered, but also stuck together like the old friends often seen in black communities in Watts. Bexley's effortless presence on screen came from his real-life friendship with Foxx. There was no need for elaborate acting. He simply brought his true self into the role, a loyal, honest, slightly clumsy friend who would never abandon his buddy. Why was the Sanford and Son cast absent? Redd Foxx's 1991 funeral closed with a haunting image: Don Bubba Bexley quietly shouldering his friend's coffin, while the very faces who had helped make Sanford and Son a television milestone were nowhere to be seen. For fans, it was a perplexing contradiction. 6 years together on screen, hundreds of episodes and laughter that echoed across America. Yet in the final moment, only Bubba remained to bid Fred Sanford goodbye. The question loomed: why were the main cast members, Demond Wilson, LaWanda Page, Whitman, Mayo, Lynn Hamilton, Gregory Sierra absent? The answer is not simple. It lies in overlapping layers of conflict, personal choices, and systemic injustice within Hollywood. First, it's impossible to ignore the fractures that developed during the production of Sanford and Son. Redd Foxx's 1973-1974 strike to raise his salary from $19,000 to $25,000 per episode, and to secure 25% of the show's profits, sent shockwaves through NBC. The absence of the lead character for 6 episodes not only disrupted the producers, but also caused tension among the cast. Demond Wilson, who played Lamont, already felt underpaid for his contributions. Now, with Foxx gone, he had to carry much of the show's dialogue. When Foxx returned with a significantly higher salary, the disparity further fueled Wilson's resentment. In his memoir, Wilson revealed that after the show ended in 1977, he and Foxx essentially cut ties. The last time they saw each other was in 1983, and from that moment until Foxx's death, they never spoke again. That prolonged silence spoke volumes. Reconciliation never came. Given such a fractured relationship, Wilson's absence at the funeral, though disappointing to fans, was perhaps inevitable. LaWanda Page, who played Aunt Esther, had also clashed with Foxx. The biting dialogue, sometimes touching on religion, a sensitive subject for someone deeply tied to her church, often made her uncomfortable. Though Page and Foxx maintained a friendship outside of work, their professional dynamic wasn't always smooth. Similarly, Whitman Mayo Grady had expressed frustration over Foxx's tendency to improvise and alter scripts on set. For these actors, working together did not necessarily translate to a lasting off-screen bond. When Foxx passed, that emotional distance may have led them to remain quietly in the background, rather than step into the public eye. Beyond professional rifts, personal lives played a significant role. By 1991, many Sanford and Son cast members had moved on. Demond Wilson had left Hollywood entirely to become a minister and religious author. He lived a reclusive life, far from media attention, and his absence from a high-profile event like Foxx's funeral aligned with his chosen path. Whitman Mayo had relocated to Atlanta and was involved in teaching and small projects. His health was fragile, and distance might have been a practical obstacle. LaWanda Page continued performing stand-up at clubs, but was known for her privacy and seldom made public appearances. Lynn Hamilton and Gregory Sierra had also stepped away from mainstream television, rarely seen in the press. Their absence may not have stemmed from personal animosity, but rather from age, health, life changes, or even a simple lack of timely notice about the quickly arranged Las Vegas funeral. There's also a more delicate factor: financial hardship. Not every cast member enjoyed long-lasting success after Sanford and Son. Many struggled with low-paying scattered roles. A last-minute trip to a distant funeral may have been beyond their financial reach. In an industry where fading from the spotlight often means financial instability, not attending a funeral wasn't necessarily a sign of apathy, but perhaps a matter of inability. But the deeper cause lies within Hollywood itself. While Sanford and Son symbolized breakthrough representation, it also laid bare systemic inequities. Fox had to fight for equal pay to All in the Family's Carol O'Connor. Supporting cast members, despite their essential roles, earned far less than their white peers. This structure kept black actors in a position of disadvantage, dependent on rare opportunities and easily forgotten after a show's end. As a result, when Fox died, it wasn't merely a personal story. It reflected how Hollywood had fractured on-screen relationships before they could become real ones. Sanford and Son's cast was placed in subtle competition, with few chances to sustain their careers and little incentive or space to form a real family. Fox's funeral then was missing familiar faces, not only due to interpersonal rifts, but because a larger system had long since driven them apart. In full context, the cast's collective absence from Redd Foxx's funeral wasn't a simple decision. It was the outcome of many overlapping factors: deep-seated conflicts, diverging life paths, private hardships, and the structural injustices of 1970s-80s American entertainment. Their silence wasn't just about distance from Fox. It reflected a broader narrative about how Hollywood treated black performers, where the bright stage lights never fully hid the cracks behind the scenes. And within that contradiction, Don Bubba Bexley's quiet presence took on profound meaning. He wasn't a star. He wasn't embroiled in controversy. But he was the one who never left Fox's side. In contrast, the absence of the rest of the cast became an unanswerable question, one that continues to stir debate among the public to this day: Hollywood and the racial divide. The story of Redd Foxx's funeral is not merely about personal conflicts or the private silence of the Sanford and Son cast. It exposes a broader, more entrenched reality: the systemic injustice that Hollywood has imposed on black performers for decades. When Fox went on strike in 1973 to demand pay equal to Carol O'Connor of All in the Family, he wasn't just fighting for himself, he was fighting for an entire generation. Yet the very need for such a fight highlighted a painful truth: to be treated fairly, black artists often had to sacrifice more, take bigger risks, and sometimes pay with the loss of professional relationships. In that context, Sanford and Son became a double-edged sword. On one hand, it paved the way for black-led series like Good Times, The Jeffersons, and What's Happening, bringing African-American characters into primetime and attracting tens of millions of viewers. On the other hand, the show faced criticism for reinforcing stereotypes: the lazy, grumbling black man who relied on schemes to get by. Critic Eugenia Collier bluntly called it a white man's view of black men. In other words, even when black performers gained visibility on screen, they remained confined within a framework dictated by the industry. When compared to later sitcoms like Friends or Seinfeld, where white actors earned millions of dollars per season and rose to global superstardom, the disparity becomes even more glaring. Despite Sanford and Son's cultural impact in the 1970s, its cast members were largely sidelined after the show ended. Few received substantial new roles. Many were forced to change careers, retreat from Hollywood, or struggle in obscurity with minor parts long forgotten. Thus, their absence from Fox's funeral cannot be separated from the larger narrative and entertainment industry that profited from the talent and personality of black performers, but failed to offer them lasting support or a sense of community. Redd Foxx's funeral crowded with media attention and stars from various fields, yet missing his on-screen family became a bitter metaphor. Laughter had connected them with millions of viewers, but Hollywood had divided them at the core. Life after Sanford and Son. Who rose, who faded into silence. After Redd Foxx passed away, the cast of Sanford and Son each went their separate ways. His 1991 funeral became a dividing line in memory. On one side, the glory of the past. On the other, the unpredictable paths that followed. Demond Wilson, who played Lamont, made the most radical shift. After years in film and television, he declared his departure from Hollywood to become a Christian minister. Wilson authored over 10 books on faith, marriage, and spiritual life, including a memoir titled Second Banana, in which he reflected on his years working with Fox. He openly admitted that while he was grateful for Sanford and Son, the experience was also filled with tension. Financially, he embraced a modest lifestyle, living with his family in Georgia, occasionally appearing at religious conferences. Wilson became a prime example of someone who left Hollywood behind, choosing a quiet life far from the spotlight. LaWanda Page. The iconic Aunt Esther continued acting and performing stand-up comedy. She appeared in various comedy shows, commercials, and even music videos throughout the 1990s, remembered by younger audiences for her strong personality and sharp wit. Though she passed away in 2002, Page is still recognized as one of the most influential Black female comedians, paving the way for future generations. For her, Aunt Esther became a lifelong emblem, a role that not only brought laughter, but also stood as a cultural symbol of Black womanhood on television. Whitman Mayo. The gentle and goofy Grady left his own mark as well. After Sanford and Son, he starred in a spin-off titled Grady, though it didn't meet expectations. Mayo then turned to teaching theater and acting in Atlanta, Georgia, becoming a beloved mentor in the community and inspiring many young actors. Until his death in 2001, Mayo lived a life defined not by fleeting fame, but by planting seeds in education and local culture. Lynn Hamilton, who played Donna Harris, Fred Sanford's longtime girlfriend, continued a steady career in television, appearing in notable series such as The Waltons and Generations. She lived a relatively private life and was rarely seen in the media, yet remained fondly remembered by loyal viewers as a representation of an independent woman at a time when strong female characters were rare in Black sitcoms. Gregory Sierra, who portrayed Julio the Puerto Rican neighbor, moved on to other major projects such as Barney Miller and Miami Vice. He was recognized for bringing cultural diversity to the screen, something still uncommon in American television at the time. Sierra passed away in 2021, leaving behind a legacy of roles that helped expand Latino representation in TV drama and comedy. Don Bubba Bexley. The only close friend to attend Fox's funeral, lived another decade after Fox. He continued to act in smaller roles, but his most enduring legacy was his deep friendship with Fox. Bexley died in 1997, remembered not just as Bubba from Sanford, but as living proof that in an industry fraught with inequality, some bonds could still outlast fame and fortune. Overall, few members of the cast reached the same heights after Sanford and Son's 1972-1977 run. Part of this was due to Hollywood's failure to offer them equal opportunities, and part because each chose different paths: ministry, education, stand-up, or a quieter life out of the public eye. But this dispersal only magnified the tragedy of Fox's funeral, a moment that revealed how a family once united by laughter had ultimately fractured, each person walking their own road. Today, when Sanford and Son is remembered, audiences recall the unforgettable one-liners, the booming laughter, and the legacy of a cast who helped break through the walls of American television. But they also remember that behind the screen, each cast member carried their own story, one of pride and also a trace of sorrow. If the story of Redd Foxx's life and the mysteries surrounding his funeral made you pause and reflect, don't forget to leave a comment below to share your thoughts. What stood out to you the most? His brilliant career, the behind-the-scenes conflicts, or the profound loneliness at the end? Let's discuss together to better understand the hidden corners behind the spotlight.
All data, analysis, and commentary in this video are presented based on information available at the time of production. The content is subject to change over time and should not be considered a definitive forecast. There is still so much more to explore: stories of resilience, legacy, and truth. Feel free to dive into some of our top recommended videos now appearing on your screen.